What if the biggest, most monumental success you could achieve wasn't from a single massive jump, that lottery win or the one viral moment that changes everything?
Right.
But what if it came from a series of tiny, almost invisible decisions you're making right now? The ones that are so small,
Yeah.
you barely even notice them.
It's a really compelling way to start because we are absolutely, conditioned to look for the big bang.
The big moment.
Yeah, the immediate inflection point. And we so often just disregard the slow, steady accumulation of effort, even though that's what's responsible for nearly all real long-term growth.
Exactly. And that slow, steady process, which is actually governed by a pretty powerful formula, is the whole focus of our deep dive today. We've pulled together excerpts from sources that summarize what's often called the compound formula for incremental success. It basically lays out a mathematically proven path to achieving some pretty extraordinary results.
And what's crucial here, and the sources really hammer this point home, is that this is not about temporary motivation. It's not inspirational quotes or just some feel-good talk. This is presented as a grounded, real-life formula. It's focused purely on consistency, arithmetic, and just sustained action.
So our mission today is really to break down the mechanics of compounding, take it out of, the financial world and bring it into the world of personal achievement.
Yeah.
We want you to understand why those tiny, consistent choices are exponentially more important than any sudden, massive burst of effort.
The core premise, really, from all the material, is that massive success is never a single event. It just isn't. It happens through the compounding of small, consistent, smart actions over a lot of time.
Yeah, think of it less like a sprint and more like designing a trajectory.
That's a great way to put it.
It's
the difference between, say, pushing a giant boulder once it moves a little bit and applying a small directional force every single day for years.
Yeah.
That's what actually transforms the entire landscape.
Okay, so let's unpack that core concept immediately, because the math is really the foundation of all this. Darren Hardy's formula, which comes from the source material, it's crystal clear.
Deceptively simple.
It is. It's small, smart choices plus consistency plus time equals massive success.
And it's that small choices part that's so deceptive. We just dismiss them. We ignore them because they look so insignificant in the moment.
Oh, they call it the snowball effect, and I think it's a brilliant analogy for how this works. Imagine you just start making slightly better food choices, just, enough to shave off 100 calories a day. Or you commit to reading 10 extra pages every single day.
Or even just saving an extra $1, something tiny.
Exactly. In week one, it feels like nothing. But over time, that repetition starts to gather mass, and it turns into this giant snowball of advantage.
And this is where the exponential power comes in, which is, I think, the key insight we have to get from the source material. Think about the math for a second. If you improve by just 1% every day for a year, the equation is 1.01 to the power of 365.
Right.
The result is an improvement of nearly 38 times where you started.
38 times? That's staggering.
But then you have to look at the reverse, the compounding factor in failure. If you degrade your effort by just 1% every day, you skip a workout, you eat slightly worse.
That 0.99.
Exactly. 0.99 to the power of 365. You shrink down to almost nothing, like 0.03. The difference between those two tiny, nearly invisible daily choices is just immense. But the results only show up after many, many months.
And that brings us directly to the sort of psychological hinge here, the deceptive nature of the starting point.
Yes.
This is where most people derail, precisely because the results are invisible. We ask ourselves, what difference does skipping one day of studying make? And the brutal truth is, one single bad choice really does nothing.
It's harmless on its own.
Right.
And that's the danger. The problem isn't the single choice. The danger is that the repeated choice solidifies into a pattern, and that repeated pattern becomes your destiny. That's the compounding factor working in reverse, just silently.
Let's look at the concrete examples the source gives, because they illustrate this hidden delay perfectly.
Okay.
So take the negative path. If you indulge in small daily junk food choices, you don't get sick tomorrow. You won't see any health consequences until years later when that 100 extra calories a day has compounded into, significant weight gain.
In metabolic strain. Conversely, the positive path. If you choose to read, say, just 20 pages of a relevant industry book every day, you don't suddenly become an expert next month.
No.
But you gain a massive, tangible knowledge and vocabulary advantage years down the line. The sources really emphasize this point. Success and failure are both completely invisible in the beginning.
You can't see the effect until the momentum has built up, and that delay is what requires such immense discipline. So if those small, smart choices are the input, then the sustainable output is really defined by our habits, which moves us right into our second section. Habits, the architects of our future.
Absolutely. The sources lay it out so clearly. Your daily habits fundamentally decide how you look, how you earn, and how you feel.
Yeah.
Habits are the reliable engine of the compound effect, mainly because they eliminate the need for daily decision-making. It becomes automatic.
And this is where we run into that core paradox of human motivation. We are just wired for immediate reward.
Yes.
Bad habits feel easy. They feel, enjoyable at the start. They give you that immediate hit of dopamine, whether it's scrolling on your phone or eating comfort food.
But good habits, by contrast, they feel tedious. They can
Yeah.
feel really difficult at the beginning. Working out, meditating, budgeting, I mean, they all require effort and offer no immediate intoxicating reward.
They're a mechanism of deferred gratification. And let's be honest, they feel boring.
They do. And this inherent difference between sort of fun now, pain later, and pain now, reward later, defines the whole consequence. Good habits reward you slowly but powerfully over time, giving you those compound returns. Bad habits, they punish you slowly and brutally over time.
And the source material gives a really stark warning here. It says, by the time you realize the full catastrophic damage from that compounded bad habit, it's often far too late to just simply reverse course.
And that is the insidious part of compounding failure.
Yeah.
You only start noticing when the line on the graph suddenly spikes down into disaster territory.
A health scare, a financial emergency.
A professional collapse, exactly. You didn't realize the gravity of those small daily poor choices until the compounded interest or, damage had already fully accrued. It's a serious call to audit your routines now.
While those choices are still small and easily reversible,
Yeah.
that realization that you are where you are because of a million tiny past choices, that requires a massive internal shift, which brings us perfectly to the two crucial tools the source material provides for driving this change. The first one is taking 100% responsibility.
This is perhaps the toughest rule in the whole formula
It is.
because it just strips away all your comfort blankets. It requires you to look inward and just cease all excuses.
But wait, doesn't that seem a little overly harsh? I mean, we know genuine external obstacles exist, the economy, market shifts, just plain bad luck. Where does the formula allow for those real challenges?
And that's the nuance. The source material doesn't deny the existence of bad luck or external challenges, but it demands that you refuse to let them be an excuse for inaction. The sources are absolutely ruthless about what they define as excuses. Blaming your parents, the economic climate, bad luck, your boss, all of that is just off the table.
I see the difference. So it's a shift from dwelling on what happened to focusing on what you can do next.
Exactly. When you stop blaming external forces, you make a profound shift in power. Taking 100% responsibility brings the locus of control back into your hands, and only then does sustained change even become possible. The sources state it bluntly. A victim mindset kills growth.
If you only see yourself as a casualty, you can't be the agent.
You can't. Not if you want to use the compound effect.
So that internal shift is foundational. But the formula also requires an external, objective mechanism to keep it all running. And that's tool 2. Tracking changes everything.
This is a direct application of that classic business principle. Whatever you measure automatically improves.
Right.
If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And if it's invisible, you can't compound it intentionally.
The source material suggests starting small by tracking just 3 core things right away. Track your food choices, track your time, and track your habits. Specifically, the ones you want to install or remove.
And let's be specific here. If you're trying to cut a bad habit, like, say, mindless spending, tracking means writing down every single purchase.
Even the $5 coffee.
Especially the $5 coffee. And if you're trying to install a good habit, tracking means checking a box only if you completed the full habit. Did you read the 10 pages? Yes or no? Not just sort of.
And the immediate benefits you get just from the act of writing things down, the simple physical act of tracking, are so powerful. It dramatically increases your awareness of where your time and energy are actually going.
Contrasting it with where you think it's going.
Exactly. And that awareness gives you control over those previously invisible choices. And just sticking to the logging builds immense discipline. It forces those small choices to become visible data points you can actually act on.
It creates accountability where there is none.
Yeah.
And once those small tracked habits are consistently repeated daily, that's when the process transitions from just effort to exponential results. And that moves us into harnessing momentum.
Momentum really does feel like magic, but it's just physics applied to daily action, right?
Right.
It's the accelerator in the compound formula.
It is.
When you start seeing those small wins pile up, the number of books read, the dollars saved, the pounds lost, your confidence naturally increases, your energy builds, and that often elusive motivation starts to feel completely natural, not forced.
Because you're operating from a place of proven success, not just wishful thinking. The source highlights a key difficulty here, which is that the starting point is the hardest phase.
Right.
It takes a massive amount of inertia to get that snowball moving from a standstill.
But once that momentum is established, stopping becomes incredibly difficult. You've built systems, you've built confidence, and the progress just accelerates exponentially. You move away from that linear one-for-one growth and you start riding the curve.
Now, while momentum is internal, the environment is this powerful external force that can either fuel or just completely derail that progress. And we often dismiss its influence.
The source material is very explicit on this. It
Yeah.
says, people, media, friends, and the content you consume shape you far more than you think.
Especially for those small subconscious choices. We really need to acknowledge the subtle, constant influence of our surroundings.
Hmm.
Darren Hardy's explicit rule here is a direct challenge to that complacency.
What's the rule?
Either design your environment or it will design you. There's no neutral ground.
Wow. Think about that impact. If your environment is filled with positive, striving people, they unconsciously hold you accountable to a higher standard. They push you.
And if your environment is filled with negative people, they naturally provide you with plenty of ready-made excuses. They rationalize your backsliding.
Right.
And this leads to another fascinating observation from the source. Success is contagious. It's a powerful reminder that just proximity to success accelerates your own compounding efforts. We need to be intentional about the inputs we allow.
Whether they're people, media, or even just the books sitting on our nightstand.
Everything.
Okay, so if the environment sets the stage and the habits are the actors, what determines the performance quality over the long run? That brings us to our final crucial insight. Discipline trumps motivation.
This is the synthesis of why this whole formula works long-term, because it removes your dependence on fleeting feelings.
Right.
The source is so clear on this. Motivation is temporary. Discipline, however, is permanent because it's baked into your system.
This is where the high achiever really differentiates themselves from the average person. The instruction is to work even when you don't feel like it. You cannot wait for inspiration or mood to strike before you execute on that small, smart choice.
It's all about building routines and operating systems, rather than depending on your mood or emotion. If you have a system, a time carves out for that choice, a documented commitment, you show up regardless.
Regardless of whether you feel motivated that day.
Exactly. And this consistent system-based approach is the fundamental difference the sources conclude between those who capture exponential success and those who just remain average.
That system-based reliance on discipline is incredibly powerful because it makes success predictable. So, looking back at everything we've synthesized here, what makes this formula so potent for you? For you, listener.
I think it's the practicality. It uses simple language, contains really compelling real-life examples, and it just avoids all the fluff of temporary inspiration.
Yeah.
It doesn't promise you the fairy tale of overnight success.
Yeah?
It shows you the real path, which involves slow, steady grinding that guarantees a massive payout later.
So, the final takeaway, that actionable truth at the center of this whole deep dive, is really this. Success is not an accident. It is the predictable result of daily small decisions compounded over time.
Just focused relentlessly on that 1% rule. If you commit to being just 1% better today and 1% better tomorrow and every day after that, the math just proves your life can completely transform in just a few years. It's a silent revolution of incremental improvement that nobody sees until the results are too massive to ignore.
That compounds everything we've talked about. So to end, let's leave you with one provocative thought that builds on this idea of tracking an environment. If what you measure automatically improves, and your environment is constantly shaping your invisible choices, what one small aspect of your immediate physical environment, the book on your desk, the noise in your workspace, the first app you click, could you start measuring or intentionally changing today to ensure it pushes you toward that critical 1% improvement even when motivation is nowhere to be found. Think about what you will force into visibility.
Because that one small choice,
Yeah.
repeated, is the one that changes everything.
That's the compound effect. We'll see you for the next deep dive.